Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're diving into something pretty relevant, I think, to everyone listening. Campaign finance
Yeah.
and the intersection with kind of public perception and some of the choices made during high-profile campaigns.
Definitely.
So this time we're looking at a YouTube video that one of you sent in titled Pathetic and Insulting. Kamala Harris asks for more money to cover campaign debt.
Wow.
And yeah, just reading that title, I think a lot of us can relate to that kind of feeling of like, oh my gosh, more money, asking for more when you're already in debt.
Right.
But when it's a political campaign, the stakes are just so much higher than our personal finances, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, what's really fascinating about this particular case is the sheer scale.
Right.
This wasn't, someone running for city council or something. This was a billion-dollar campaign. So the amount of spending, the fact that it ended in defeat and with a mountain of debt, it really raises all sorts of questions about how these campaigns are run and what kind of impact that has on our political system as a whole.
Absolutely. And the video really highlights that contrast. It points out that Kamala Harris's campaign ended up with a $20 million deficit.
Wow.
Despite raising over $1.15 billion.
That's hard to even fathom.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling, those numbers.
It really is.
I can't even imagine spending that much money, let alone having the nerve to turn around after a loss and ask for more.
Yeah, the optics of that are definitely problematic, to say the least. I mean, especially in today's climate where so many people are struggling financially, it just doesn't sit well.
Exactly. And in the video, the commentator Brad Palumbo, he goes into some of the specifics of where that money went. And it's pretty eye-opening.
Oh, really?
He points out some pretty questionable spending choices, like, lavish celebrity endorsements and these really elaborate podcast sets that they built just for a single interview and then tore down.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, is all this spending really necessary to run a successful campaign?
That's a complex question. I mean, on the one hand, you can see how those things could be seen as frivolous and unnecessary. But on the other hand, there's this huge pressure to reach a massive audience.
Right.
And the cost of media and advertising is just skyrocketing. So it kind of pushes campaigns towards these big budget strategies.
I guess that makes sense. But do those strategies really translate into effectiveness? Like, are people really changing their votes based on which celebrity endorsed a candidate or how fancy their podcast setup is?
It's a good question. And, the research on the impact of that kind of spending on voter behavior is mixed. But what I found interesting is that Palumbo frames this not just as wasteful spending, but as a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
He argues that money could have been used for things that have a much more direct and positive impact, like providing malaria nets or feeding people experiencing homelessness.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is. And it raises a bigger question about how we prioritize resources as a society.
Right. Are we spending our money on things that actually reflect our values? And where could we be making a more meaningful difference?
Exactly. It really makes you think. And it reminds me of a conversation we had a while back about effective altruism.
Oh, yeah?
Using evidence and reason to figure out the most impactful ways to help others.
Yeah. That was a fascinating deep dive. We learned about organizations that use data to really maximize the impact of their charitable giving, focusing on interventions that have a proven track record of effectiveness.
Exactly. And it ties into what Palumbo's saying here. It's not just about the amount of money spent, but also about where it goes and how it's used. Are we investing in strategies and initiatives that have a measurable impact? Or are we just throwing money at problems without really thinking about the best solutions?
Right. It's like, are we just trying to feel good about ourselves, or are we actually trying to make a difference?
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if there could be a more data-driven approach to campaign finance as well.
That's interesting. Like, what if campaigns were evaluated not just on how much money they raised, but also on the effectiveness of their spending, how well they connect with voters, and the impact of their message?
Exactly. Imagine if they had to show that their strategies were actually mobilizing voters and promoting engagement.
That would certainly change the game. It would incentivize campaigns to find more innovative and impactful ways to reach people instead of just focusing on who can outspend the other.
Right. It would be about shifting the focus from financial power to a more strategic and outcome-oriented approach. And, this idea isn't just limited to political campaigns.
Right.
We can apply it to our own lives, too, how we spend our time, our money, our energy.
Yeah, we all have limited resources, so it's up to us to decide how we use them to make the biggest impact.
It's about aligning our actions with our values and finding those areas where we can truly make a difference.
And speaking of making a difference, This whole conversation about resource allocation and impact brings to mind something we've been thinking about a lot lately. Our own podcast,
Oh, yeah.
Standing in the Gaps, and our GoFundMe campaign.
Right. It's a perfect example of how, even on a much smaller scale, we can all play a part in creating positive change.
We're not asking for $1 billion like a political campaign,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
but we are hoping to raise funds to help us expand our reach and amplify the voices and ideas that are shaping our world.
We really believe in the power of meaningful conversations.
We do.
And we're committed to creating a platform for exploring important issues, fostering critical thinking, and building a more informed and engaged community.
And just like those campaigns we were talking about, we face those same resource constraints.
Yeah.
Expanding our reach,
Yeah.
improving the quality of our production, bringing in more diverse voices, all of that takes resources.
Definitely. And that's where our listeners come in. Our GoFundMe campaign is really a way for people who believe in what we're doing to contribute directly to our growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've been so grateful for the support we've received already.
It's been amazing.
Every donation, no matter the size, it helps us get closer to those goals, to really build the kind of platform we envision.
Yeah, it's truly a collective effort.
Mhm.
Each contribution, it's like a vote of confidence, a way for our listeners to say, we believe in what you're doing and we want to be a part of it.
Exactly. And it goes back to what Palumbo was saying.
Yeah.
How can we use our resources to make a positive impact? Supporting independent media, fostering thoughtful dialogue, those are ways to invest in a better future.
It might not be as flashy as, a celebrity-studded fundraiser.
Right.
But it's more meaningful in a way because it comes from a place of shared values.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling inspired and want to support Standing in the Gaps, you can find a link to our GoFundMe in the show notes.
Yeah, check it out.
No pressure at all. But we would be incredibly grateful for any contribution you're able to make.
Every bit helps.
And hey, maybe someday we'll even be able to afford one of those fancy podcast sets they were talking about in the video.
Okay. Wouldn't that be something?
But seriously, folks, whether you choose to support our campaign or find another cause that resonates with you, remember that individual actions matter.
Mm-hmm.
Just like all those small donations add up to make a big difference for us. Your choices, your actions can have a ripple effect and contribute to creating positive change.
So as you go about your day, think about how you can align your resources with your values. Where can you make a real impact?
That's something for all of us to ponder.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation, and we'll catch you next time for another exploration of ideas that matter.
See you then.